This morning I woke up and I'm looking at the market. I'm looking at the pre-market, what's happening, and we're getting some slippage. But what if I told you that sellers just didn't show up, right? You had every opportunity today to continue the retrace, but once again, sellers just aren't showing up. We got some of that continuation, previously, but it seems like going into Thursday and Friday, we could be set for a little bit of an explosion. Right now, we kind of anticipated going into this month that the first real week, January 8th, is when you could expect some buyers to step back in. And it seems like those funds and those buyers are stepping back into the market. We have some data we have to look at when it comes to the Nasdaq and the S&P 500 that we're going to look at very quickly here. Let's get to work. What I want to do first is start off with the 2 hour, 4 hour frequency intraday action that's taking place here. Now we can see quickly, right? Let's just really quickly dive into this. Our main levels that we've been watching. Okay, primarily 16.8, 16.6. Those are the big ones, right? This was a previous low, so it was interesting to watch that, but it wasn't a major one. Okay, now when we mounted above 16.6, again, if you want to get a better visual, go to the 15 minutes, identify that, right? So you break above, this was yesterday, we mount, and then we push to 16.8, and then we reject into today, right? And then look what happens. Basically, 8:30 market open, buyers flood back into the market. And then this is the most interesting part. Essentially from 10:30 a.m., 2 hours after market open, to the end of the day, you were just battling at that 16.8 level, and sellers show up pathetic, in my opinion. That's the simplest way to put it. Very weak action. You're just sitting here. So as we look at this, and maybe Qs are a better way to look at this. Sometimes Qs, SPY might be the easiest way to look at it. But when you look here, it looks pretty similar to me, but I know you guys like Qs, right? It looks like a bull flag. Looks like you're bull flagging to try to fill the gap back up to 407, possibly get back over 408, right? And that's where we're at, okay? That's your action so far. And again, if you watched yesterday's video, what did we say on Qs? You said you have to mount hold 403, and then pushing back into 408. Hold 408, then you're pushing back into all-time highs. SPY, what happened here? You got to hold all of our key levels. That's all you got to do. The key levels into the next key level into the next one. Very simple. They're all there. Take a screenshot if you need to. Now, the interesting part of today was the dollar. Again, the dollar paints an interesting picture. Again, overnight, I posted this on Twitter. It's actually really funny. I recommend following on Twitter if you are not already. I'm posting free content there literally all day. I said I'm praying for the DXY breakdown, but I'm not optimistic. Meaning, I didn't think we were going to get it, but it'd be really cool because it would help indexes continue to run. Obviously, from this point, you broke up and you kept running up. But to my surprise, the Nasdaq didn't care. But this is the other part of that. When you're watching the dollar, you need to also watch the yields. And the 30-year yield continues to get rejected at this level, the 200 SMA, as you can see, continually. So the question now is what is going to cause what is going to cause the 30-year yield and the DXY to drop? Before I jump into it, I do want to say, you might be wondering why were we so infatuated with the dollar and yields? I believe the dollar and yields have been one of the best indicators to understand if the market's bullish, bearish, short-term, long-term, okay? And when we're looking at these yields, it's important to realize what have we been saying? What do we think is going to be the part that makes the yields and the dollar top out? It's continued to be the same thing for me. One, Fed Powell, when he eventually speaks, which he will be speaking most likely I believe it's next week. And then also inflation data, primarily core inflation on CPI, PPI, and PCE. And CPI comes out Thursday. Friday, you have PPI. And I believe PCE is the next week. So you're going to get a bulk of information coming back in. These same reports have continued to knock down the dollar and yields and the overall expectation of rate cuts over the year. Now we're pushing this idea that we're going to be cutting rates by a full point this year. Now, I'm not siding with that thesis, but clearly the market is reacting to those assumptions, right, or to those forecasts. So you have to be able, again, to disconnect yourself from what you personally believe or you kind of have a bias towards to realize what the market is actually taking into account. And I'm telling you, those have been the biggest impacts on the market. Now, yes, we had the government funding bill that was pushed out, which was a big surprise and really helped the market. But again, it's kind of a perfect storm happening right now. And we saw a bulk of buying start today, right? I don't believe we've seen any buying over the past two weeks, basically. It's been predominantly selling lackluster, And then now we're seeing buying kick back into the market. So we have to understand that before we go any further. So again, before we go further, again, you see we're rejecting this very key level. You can obviously see what's happening. The dollar keeps topping out. I wouldn't consider this a head and shoulders, so please don't send a head and shoulders to me. You're just range bound right here, right now. You'd like to see a whole cold below 102.18. Make that really clear. Now, from this, what am I looking at? What are my favorite things? Now, number one, I'm going to tell you right now, Nasdaq is probably all you need to watch in the short term. Nasdaq or just QQQ. Obviously, in after hours, I'd recommend watching Nasdaq. Personally, all you're waiting to see is if this holds 16.8. It was a great close at the end of the day. I still like it. Big fan. You even had a little bit of a retrace on some names like NVIDIA. But shout out to NVIDIA. This thing went absolutely bonkers today, pushing into 540. I said on Twitter, I think 550 is a conservative target, and I still think we're going to have more room to run. It's also worth mentioning NVIDIA's ran like this, and I don't even think Nasdaq has reached its full potential yet. I think you have room into 17,000 on Nasdaq. So if you kind of equate all this together, I still think there's quite a bit of room to run for the Nasdaq and NVIDIA and tech stocks in general. But I believe there's another name like NVIDIA that's going to have a lot of room, and that name is Microsoft. I've been saying this a lot. So when we look at Microsoft, you've been range bound, and you guys know if we broke to the downside, I would trade this short. I'm not biased, guys, right? Very clear. You're forming these liquidity levels also. And again, if you don't have these indicators on your chart yet, these are chart prime indicators, right? So we have our volume, which we use a lot for scalping, our liquidity levels, you have your order blocks, which I don't even have those turned on right now. Half the indicators I've turned off just because it will look cleaner here for the live stream. But when we look at Microsoft, and that link's down below to check them out. When we look at Microsoft, you've been in this range. If we break to the downside, this it's really simple, people. I want to make it really simple. You break down like this, you go short, okay? You break to the upside, you go long. I'm telling you, I was talking about this on live stream. It really could play out this way. Microsoft most likely will lag behind NVIDIA. I believe Microsoft, if it holds 377, you're pushing all-time highs, most likely the $400 level. That's my guess. Okay, it's a bit of a guess, but if you break 377, you're at least running to highs. Personal opinion. Okay, Microsoft, big name, keep it on your watch list. It needs to be on the top of your watch list, to be honest. Apple, what a setup. Now, I mentioned this in yesterday's video. As you hold 183, long. As you saw today, you came right. I mean, look at that in the 5 minute. Look at this hold down here at 183. Perfect hold, remounted, boom, easy money. Apple's killing it. You're targeting 187.5. Love that right there. Not interested in AVGO. Amazon keeps on running. This is the shocking part with Amazon. Okay, I keep saying this, and people are like, "Well, Tyler, why do you equate those as the same thing?" Okay. Amazon's very bullish. You had this FUD that pushed you down because TikTok was going to get into the competition with Amazon. Okay. First of all, Tiamu is totally different than Amazon. Super sketchy. Going to say that right now. Products, nowhere near the same. Okay. Amazon, you held 149. You held the key level down here at 143.5. Everything that needed to hold is holding. XLY, consumer discretionary. All things considered, you pulled back. It's still down, primarily being held down by something like Tesla, which is probably the worst name right now, as you're clearly trading in this box. I mean, look at the box you're trading in. Absolutely horrendous. I mean, this thing is so gross. So I'm not even touching Tesla, but you got close to 200, you came down to 232, so that was good there. But again, Amazon, tough name, has a lot of room to run, would be watching it closely. Netflix, same thing here. You got a mount 485 to go long, but it still looks good. Meta, you got that perfect touch yesterday, or actually this morning. Remember, if you watch yesterday's video, you're welcome. Again, we said yesterday, go rewind the tape. It came right down to the key level, 355, and bounced perfectly back up to like 360 for a scalp. But again, I think Meta can mount above 362. In the long run, if Meta does get above 362, high possibility we start pushing back into highs. Okay. Again, kind of crazy to think about, but you're kind of already back there. I can go on a laundry list of names like Adobe, CrowdStrike. They all look really good. A lot of these names look very good, but I just want to show you my favorites, and I don't want to overwhelm you with information. In the short term, though, I can only say it so many times. You're watching yields, the 30-year. You want to see if it can continue to get rejected. If it gets rejected here, very good news. As you can see here on the higher time frames, this is what you would want to see. A breakdown to your key level, pop up, and then continuation to the downside. That would be perfect, okay? That would be beautiful. That would be perfect. The dollar, higher time frames. Again, As you can see here, still bearish. Some people are going to say, Tyler, head and shoulders. Personally, don't believe so. Okay. I don't believe the dollar is a head and shoulders pattern. The only way to get bullish on the dollar is we get above the 200 SMA. Until then, I remain bearish. I will remain with that thesis. That's my viewpoint right now. IWM is still lacking. You would like to see IWM get some love, start getting back above like 196. But until then, you got to be patient. You can't start forcing anything here. What I will say though, on higher time frames, as we look at everything, right? As we look at all this, all things considered, we look at the bounce back so far. It has been impressive, to say the least. Buyers are definitely showing up here. Very strong. You've already taken back within a day and a half, not even, over 50% of that rundown that you had over 5 days. So again, I still like the Nasdaq. It still looks strong. Very happy where we're at. Okay. ES performing, arguably better here. Still a solid daily candle, trying to push back up. Going into the Dow, very solid. You're just consolidating at high. Like I say in all my videos, when it comes to going long on names, when it comes to seeing continuation, before I go to the equity, Tesla, Nvidia, Apple, whatever it may be, it all starts with futures. If you focus on that, I'm telling you guys, if you focus on understanding that you trade based on Nasdaq and ES and you follow the way that those trade in that structure, I promise you, you will notice instant results in your trading. That's not advice. It's just the facts. If you understand what's happening with futures, you're going to understand better what's happening with the underlying equity inside that future. Okay. So you need to understand that, right? So again, when I'm looking for longs going into tomorrow, when I'm looking for continuation, as long as Nasdaq holds 16.8, I am very bullish into 17K on Nasdaq. ES, I think it's going to follow the Nasdaq. I think right now, ES and Dow look really good. They look fine. Dow, all things considered with Boeing, is still doing very good. If Nasdaq can get the party started, I think ES and Dow follow very easily, very quickly, very good money. I don't expect the dollar or yields to start dropping, if they're going to drop, until Thursday when CPI is released. So tomorrow could be a choppy day. I want to point that out right now. But again, as long as we're above 16.8, Tyler is a bull. Understand that. Below that, I'm more in the middle. Below 16.6 on Nasdaq, I'm a bear. Very simple. I don't know how else to say it. I hope that makes sense. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one, traders.